Hello, I'm Jamie Bordas. Welcome to the first ever Bordas & Bordas Legal Review. Each week we'll be bringing you relevant legal topics, and we'll have a guest on the show to be discussing those topics. I'm the managing partner of the law firm of Bordas & Bordas, and today's guest has been selected by the West Virginia Association for Justice as its Member of the Year, has been named by Best Lawyers as the Personal Injury Lawyer of the Year for the state of West Virginia, and has been named the West Virginia Super Lawyer for many years in a row. He's also one of my law partners, happens to be the best lawyer I know, and is also my dad, Jim Bordas. Dad, thanks for being on the show today.
Oh, you're welcome. My treat.
Good to have you here. Through the years, you've done a lot of different things in the law. You've been a prosecuting attorney who prosecuted the first ever triple murder case in Ohio County. You've handled some huge land transactions in the county, such as what's now Wheeling Station, one of the largest bankruptcies in the history of the county with LS Goods. But your practice ultimately led you to primarily be a trial lawyer. Why'd you head in that direction?
Well, that was my leaning from the time I was a young person in high school and later in college. It was my goal always to be able to help people to defend their rights and to help the victims of crime and of wrongdoers, both from corporations and nursing homes, medical malpractice, people who have been injured through no fault of their own and have been horribly changed.
A lot of times when someone comes to a lawyer, they've never been to a law office before. It can be an intimidating thing. What would be your advice to those folks that maybe need a lawyer, have never been to one before?
Well, the first thing I would do, I would try to get some information about the people in advance. You can do that a number of ways. You can look on the internet, of course, and somebody's website, and you get a small feel for who the people are. And the lawyers are supposed to give you honest information on their telephone books, their telephone ads, their television ads, their websites, and so forth. So I'd check that out. And then after that, I might ask around in the community, and I'd find out if any of their friends, neighbors, relatives have been represented by these people. And after I've done that, my due diligence, I would pick up the phone, I'd call a lawyer in one of those law firms, and I'd engage them in conversation. Or I'd stop by the office and talk to them. And you're not obligated as an individual to sign a contract, pay any money, do much of anything other than just talk on that very first meeting. So I'd encourage people simply to not be afraid or try not to be intimidated by the dark suits and the white shirts and ties, and realize that the lawyers are real people just like them. They have real needs and real worries and concerns just like them, and I think they'll do okay.
Now, you've been in practicing law in the Ohio Valley here for over 40 years, but because you've been here so long, a lot of people may not know that you're not from this area originally. What brought you to the Wheeling area?
Well, I grew up in Charleston, West Virginia, and didn't intend to come to Wheeling. But when I was in law school, I worked with a firm in Charleston one summer, George Daugherty, who was then thought as being one of the two best lawyers in the state of West Virginia, best trial lawyers. And we did a case with a firm up here in Wheeling. The case of the firm was Raleigh and Yon. And they were looking for an attorney, so when I was in my last year of law school, they offered me a position, told me I could be their trial lawyer, which is very unusual because most of the time when you're a young lawyer, you don't see the inside of a courtroom for years, sometimes 5, 6 years. So they promised me that I would be a trial lawyer from the get-go, and so I thought I would come up here and see if they were going to be true to their word, and they were. And I got into the courtroom pretty quickly. Both through the prosecuting attorney's office, where I was the assistant, but I was the lead attorney on all of our major cases. And I tried the cases that my law firm had. Within a very short period of time, I was involved in some pretty major cases, and I started my own law firm in Elm Grove across from the old First National Bank. And it was there that we developed a practice, just me and a couple of secretaries, and pretty quickly I was on some of the national television shows like Inside Edition and 60 Minutes, 48 Hours, CNN, things of that sort for some of the cases that I'd been involved in, and some of the causes that I was championing in the state of West Virginia, actually nationally.
I can remember as a kid when Ed Bradley from 60 Minutes came up to our house to do the interview of you and the female coal miners that you represented, who were being discriminated against, who were being looked at through peepholes in the coal mine, in the shower room, in the bathrooms, etc. And that was a trailblazing case that did change the way the law treats women in coal mines and in the workplace. What was it like to be able to represent people and to make changes in the law?
Well, that case actually was a springboard to the case down in Beckley in federal district court, and that was against Piston Coal Company. And there were 7 female miners, just like there were up here in Wheeling. And women at that time in our society, and they still are to some degree, were not treated very favorably by male employers. And they had a pretty tough time, especially in heavy industry. And in both these cases, there were very few coal mining women in the mines, and these women were pretty interesting women. They were very intelligent. Some of them have been teachers, others have been nurses, but they really didn't make the money that they needed to support their families. In most cases, they had been divorced, they'd been single mothers, and they really needed a better income to support their families in a way of life that they hoped to support them. So they worked in the heavy industry, in the coal mines, and oftentimes they were 7 among 400 men, and the rules of society above ground didn't necessarily apply back then underground. So they were pretty poorly treated. They were horribly treated. And so we tried a case in Beckley in federal district court, and there was so much it garnered so much press, and there was so many people against the coal mining women because a word was put out by Piston Coal Company that we were going to close the mines and close the town, that we had federal marshals from 5 different states that had to protect me and the coal mining women. And the judge in that case, a very courageous judge, Judge Elizabeth Hallahan, changed the way that women are treated in the workforce, not only in the mining industry, but in heavy industry throughout this country, by the order she issued as a result of those courageous women that I tried the case with in Beckley, West Virginia. So that was a landmark case. I'm very proud of that case because I've always felt a special need to protect the people I thought needed protected: the bullied, the disenfranchised, the women, the children, and the elderly. And that's who I wanted to be. It's what I want to do with my life's work. And we're still able to do that at my law firm, Bordas & Bordas. And instead of just having one lawyer now, my wife joined me in 1985, and Jamie told you he thought I was the best lawyer that he'd ever seen. Well, the best I've seen is my wife. And she and I started to practice, and we've now got 13 lawyers. And those 13 lawyers are all incredibly good. They come from diverse backgrounds, from New York, from Vermont, from Arizona, come from major law schools. Jamie was one of the top kids in his class at Notre Dame, as was one of our West Pointers, Jeff Brown, who was also in the top of his class, along with Chris Reagan, who was our debate champion. So we've got a firm now of lawyers who are dedicated to fighting the tough battles and fighting hard for our clients, yet being very compassionate at the same time. And that's our goal, to fight as hard as we can, to kick the bad guys' teeth in if we have to, but still at the same time being compassionate, understanding, and Christian with respect to our clients.
You know, you mentioned being on 60 Minutes, Inside Edition, some of those shows, but there's also a lot of lawyer shows on TV these days. You know, different dramas in the evening, the Boston Legals over the years, things like that. Ally McBeal, going back a little further, in L.A. Law even before that. How realistic do you think these TV shows are, the dramas and things like that, compared to what may really happen in a law firm in real life?
Well, some of them are pretty accurate. The one that I see right now that I enjoy is The Good Wife, and The Good Wife is pretty right on. It's I think what you see there is pretty realistic. Some of the other shows, Ally McBeal was pretty far out there. Boston Legal, I loved that show, and I thought Alan Cage and I thought Denny Crane were fun to watch, but it wasn't realistic. Some of the shows that they had came right from the shows of the day, the things that were happening in everyday life. So that, in effect, was realistic. But they had in a half an hour show or an hour show, they have to get a lot in. So some of the things, the interaction between the lawyers and the judge, the lawyers and the jury, that's not very realistic. It's much more formal. In a real-life situation, there's a lot more that goes into it. For an example, what the viewing audience doesn't see that really goes on in a real high-tech law firm like ours is, in every case, every major case certainly, we do a focus group. And we do the focus group sometimes at the start of a case, sometimes towards the end of the case. And we do that because we want to find out what real people, other than lawyers, think about a particular case or how they're going to respond to a certain issue. We also spend a lot of time in jury selection. Now, in some of the bigger movies that have been made, there's a lot to do about jury selection, and there's some truth to that, not to the extent that you've seen in some of the movies, but we spend a lot of time on jury selection because our cases are all about juries, and it's everyday people, like some of the people maybe viewing this show, that ultimately are the most important people in a case. They make the decisions as to what's ultimately going to happen with our client and with society in general, because these cases actually sometimes go up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court then makes the law of the land. So the juries that decide these cases, they actually do more than they think they do. They actually oftentimes are play a big role, a big part in developing a law of this state and the state of our nation. It's called the common law. So we have laws through statutes and common law and their cases. So what you see in a television drama, at least in something like Good Wife, is very similar to what we do. But most of the other ones weren't. They were just good entertainment.
We're going to take our first break. When we come back on the Bordas and Bordas Legal Review, we'll continue our discussion with Wheeling attorney Jim Bordas regarding some of today's relevant legal topics. Welcome back to the Bordas and Bordas Legal Review. I'm here today with my guest and law partner, Jim Bordas, who's an attorney here in Wheeling. He's practiced for over 40 years. Dad, we are here on a college campus at West Liberty today, and you know, there may be some kids out there that want to consider being a lawyer, may want to consider going to law school. What would you recommend to those folks to determine, do I really want to go to law school, or you know, what should I study if I want to go to law school?
Well, I personally think the best field to study is business. I think you have more business courses your first year in law school than any other type of course. You only have one political science type course in all of law school, and that's constitutional law. So many students, I think, are told they should have a political science major, and I personally think that's wrong. If I were to tell somebody, I'd say do business, have an accounting program in the business, within the business program, and try that. And I would also bone up on my writing skills, because so much of law school is writing, and later on when you're a lawyer, writing is a big part of what you do.
You know, we talked a little bit earlier in the show about, you know, lawyer shows on TV and whether they're realistic or not, but you know, a lot of being a lawyer is the research, the writing, the knowing your facts part of it, not just standing in the courtroom and arguing. And kids out there may not understand that. They may think that a lawyer is something other than what it is. What would you suggest to them to find out if they really do want to be a lawyer?
Well, they might want to pick up the phone and call a lawyer and find out if they can spend some time in the lawyer's office. I think we have at least one person every single year in our office that's a clerk. They don't really, there's not a whole lot of benefit we derive from them. I think they gain a lot of insight as to what a real lawyer's office is like, at least a trial law firm is like. And I think most firms would probably let kids spend a week or a few days anyway with them, so you get a pretty good idea in even a few days as to what it's like to be a lawyer. Now, the one thing, Jamie, I think that's interesting is I think people do believe that you're sitting behind a desk and just shuffling papers all day. And if that's all you did, I think that'd be pretty darn boring. But it's really pretty interesting because you've got a whole host of things that you're reviewing every day, from product liability cases involving cars and how cars are put together, other defective products, nursing home cases, medical malpractice cases, your regular truck cases, a company suing another company for patent infringements, you know, just any number of things. So it's really pretty interesting, and you're taking a case from start to finish, from the investigation when you first talk to the people to photographs and reviewing things. So it's pretty exciting.
You mentioned a whole host of different types of cases there, and during your career, you've been fortunate enough to handle big cases in a lot of those different areas, and you've had a huge track record of success at trial in those various areas. What do you attribute your success to in the courtroom to be able to handle all those various types of cases but still be successful in them?
Well, mostly I think I'm just really good looking. And, no, I think what happens, I think hard work is first. I think that's at the top of the list. And then you've got to have good support. So in all seriousness, I really do think something has played a great role in my success. I had a great wife. I've been blessed with a great wife. So that was a big plus for me, and I'm sure it is for anybody who's had a degree of success. But in a courtroom, I think what's happened is I think I've been blessed with the ability to work hard, but I've also been blessed with the ability to feel for people. I've been able to put myself in other people's shoes, and I think when I try a case to a jury, the jury knows that I'm sincere and that I really believe in the case that I've taken. We certainly don't take every case, as you know. So we screen our cases very carefully, and we take the cases that are only the very best cases and the people that need us the most. And when we stand in front of a jury and we're arguing a position, I say the jury knows there's credibility there, and they know we're sincere, and they know that they can accomplish justice by doing what's right in our case for our clients.
One of the types of cases that you've mentioned a couple of times during the show are nursing home litigation. And we do have an older population here in the Ohio Valley, and a number of people have loved ones, maybe a mother, a father, a grandparent in a nursing home, or may someday themselves be in a nursing home. What are some of the things that people should look out for, in terms of making sure that a loved one is safe when they're in a nursing home if they have to place them there for care?
Well, let me just go back a little bit. First, when you're looking for an attorney, if you do have a nursing home issue, I love old people. I'm old myself, and I'm probably going to be in a nursing home myself before too very long. But I've always liked the senior citizens, and I think you want a lawyer that you can really tell cares for senior citizens. But when you're looking for a nursing home, there's a number of things you can do when you're checking these things out. The first thing, you can go to the nursing home, and if you open the door and you have a smell of foul odor, I can promise you that's not the nursing home you want your loved one to be in, because what that means is there are nursing home residents, that's what they call them, not patients, but residents, who are not being attended to the way they need to be attended to. They're laying in bed with dirty diapers. They're laying in their own feces and urine. Their call bells are not being answered. They're developing pressure sores, which later lead to infections and later lead to death. So that's one thing you can do. Just go to the nursing home, look at the residents. If they're all slumped over in wheelchairs, then they're not being attended to. They're being doped up. They're not being cared for. It's not where you want your loved one to be. If you have that foul odor, that's the other thing. But you can also go on the television or the internet. You can go to the internet and pull up a thing called Nursing Home Compare. And that's a device where you can find out how a nursing home is rated, one versus another, based on ratings that your own state has done. So that's important too. And finally, I would talk to lawyers who have done nursing home cases. And that may seem like a strange way to go before you've ever had a loved one in a nursing home and had a problem. But I can tell you, for the most part, lawyers like me and the people in my firm that do these cases, we know the good nursing homes, we know the bad nursing homes, and of course we know the ones in between. So we can give you the real scoop, the real lowdown on where you might want to consider.
Now, another type of case you mentioned are truck cases, and as we drive around the Ohio Valley right now, there's a lot of construction going on. It's going on I-70, it's going on 470, some of the other routes, and that always seems to be or lead to an increase in tractor-trailer accidents, more so than maybe in other parts of the country. Why do we see so many tractor-trailer accidents in this area? What leads to those, and what can people do if they happen to be in an accident?
Well, I think one of the big problems is in our area here in Ohio County, you've got so much truck traffic that's being funneled through the tunnel, I think the people, when they developed this system, when they put in I-470, there was a strong hope that the trucks would use I-470. Unfortunately, they don't. So many of the trucks in this country still plow right through the tunnels. And what happens is the truck drivers oftentimes aren't familiar with this very poor design of the highway system as you're approaching the Wheeling tunnels. And that's where the traffic slows down and so forth. And you've got truck drivers that have been driving oftentimes longer than they probably should be driving. They're tired, they're exhausted. They sometimes have bad brakes, defective brakes. They sometimes have defective equipment, and they are not familiar with our highways here in Wheeling. So you've got people that are familiar with our highways, are people that use these roads all the time, and you're coming through the tunnels, and all of a sudden you've got a highway system that dumps traffic into that left-hand lane. People can't get it over quick enough, and they're rear-end collisions oftentimes that kill people. And we've represented the families of probably 8 or 10 different people that have been killed over the years just on that little stretch from Triadelphia to the Wheeling tunnels. And it's a real serious problem. We need to continue to make sure that people are on the lookout for these trucks. So when you're looking in your rearview mirror at a truck approaching rapidly behind you, you better try to take all the precautions you can to leave as much room as you can, because there's a chance that you may get clobbered.
One of the things I want to finish the show with today is there's a big Supreme Court race in West Virginia this fall. You know, there's two Democrats, Robin Davis, who's the incumbent on the court, Tish Chafe, and then, of course, two Republicans, Alan Lowry and Judge Yoder from the Eastern Panhandle. What are your thoughts on the race?
Well, my thoughts are, one, we've got a great Supreme Court justice that's up for re-election, Robin Davis. And Justice Davis has been an exceptional judge. She's been on the bench for 12 years already. She was a very good attorney before she was a judge. She is a person of very high moral character, good intellect, and a good work ethic. She treats the people that have been before her court with respect. She treats the people that have cases with respect. It doesn't matter whether you're a corporation or a very small person. You get the same treatment in her court, which is good. She's up for re-election. If you think I'm for her by what I've just said, you're dead bang right. I'm for her. I think the state of West Virginia needs this woman. I was down there yesterday at a case yesterday, and unfortunately Robin was sick yesterday and wasn't on the bench, but the other 4 justices were, and they're all good. We've got a great tradition of having very good Supreme Court justices in the state of West Virginia. One of the very best we've ever had was Tom Miller from Wheeling. And these new people we have on the court, they carry that same tradition of fairness and intellect and moral soundness. So there are 4 people running, and the one that I can strongly endorse to all the people that are watching this program is Robin Davis. And regardless of your politics, Democrat, Republican, she's the one, in my opinion, that is best for West Virginia. And she's been supported, by the way, by labor, I think by the chamber, by a corporation. She's supported pretty much by everybody. She's well thought of by pretty much everyone.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. This is our first show, and to have
always
you
nice
on,
to be with my son.
Well, to have you on was a real treat for me, and something that will always be memorable. So thank you for joining me here today.
Well, let me say one other thing. It's the greatest thing of being in practice is when you're in practice with your wife and your child. Let me tell you, there is nothing greater, and it's the best lawyer in the state after Linda is probably sitting right next to me, and it's been a treat working with Jamie all these years.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you all for joining us for the first ever Bordas and Bordas Legal Review. Join us again next week when we'll continue to talk about relevant legal topics for the state of West Virginia and here in the Ohio Valley. Thanks for being with us today.